Okay, so welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Robert. We have Michael and we have Krieg here today. Michael is well, let me update the chart actually too. Michael is an animator slash character modeler, and Krieg is one of the hosts, but also kind of helps in doing a community help and just doing level design here and there. First thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the progress with the vehicles. And then we're going to be segueing into some of the other subtopics. Unless you want to start on the animation and the character modeling stuff first, Michael. What do you feel like? All right, anyway, yours.
Sure, why not? All right. So, as you guys have already seen, um, the infected models have kind of gotten like spruced up a little bit. As it stands right now, we're kind of wrapping that up. We're not really happy with the current outfit, so we're going to spruce that up a little bit, and then we're going to segue more into like the finite polish of getting that settled down. Some of the major plans with that is kind of reducing the draw calls. So what I've been looking at is like once we get it to where we want it, is putting all those lovely little Atlas. How much can I curse actually? I just realized that. Is there like a question? Okay. So, anyways, once I finish that, I'm gonna put all of them onto an atlas and try to reduce those draw calls into one. So that means like all the standard infected would just be one draw call. Like obviously it'd be like, so like if we had 60 on there, they're all pulling from the same texture sheet, and that greatly reduces the hit on your guys' CPU. So that means we can have bigger battles, more infected on the screen, and you guys won't get hit with bottlenecks because, as you already know, RTS games are very CPU heavy. So just looking at ways of polishing that and getting that finite so we don't have to come back to it and you guys can just enjoy a very polished experience when you guys play.
Mm-hmm. I was
Outside
say,
of that,
you missed one point. One point I was going to add to that is that when you say more infected, he means really more variations of the infected, right? More than anything.
kind of a mixture of both. Like you got to think like what I'm saying is like more infected that allows us to kind of have like right now I'd say like there's only like I think maybe a max of like 80 at a time that can be out on the
No,
field
two
that you can
hundred.
visibly see. Being able to double
Is it?
that, well, 200. Well, okay, let's take that 200 and not make it has as much as an impact because as it stands, each one of those guys is about 2 draw calls each. So that's 2 times 200. That's double the amount of calls just for those 200 people. It's literally
Sure.
400 calls for 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. So I'm looking to basically half that number, if not try to lower it, because some of those guys have 3 material IDs, so that's 3 calls for one person. So that could be
Yeah.
1 times
And it
3,
also depends based off of the
3 times
LOD and
200,
like
yeah,
the because
etc.
you have different material IDs based off of the LOD level.
Yeah,
So
exactly,
so while he's working on the
exactly.
optimization, he's also working on just refining. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, and so outside of that, as you can, see, we've kind of gotten rid of the Gibbs system, and we probably talked about this a few podcasts ago, but looking into kind of like making that more polished with once we get this finalized, I can go in and start making like the chunks come back. So when you blow off someone's leg, hey, look, there's a leg there. It doesn't just poof blood and his leg's gone. Like it's a damn magic trick. Get rid of that. So that's another thing that we're looking into go into after we get this like foundation like solidified with them is going back in and kind of tweaking the VFX for them. And then in terms of like the animation side, kind of looking at where we can kind of incorporate, like I would say going into January, February, we're going to be looking at some newer technology. So like, like newer character creator and kind of looking at getting everything just spruced up onto the control rig to have more additive animation. And that would make things feel a lot more fluid. And that's kind of one of the big things that I'm really looking forward into getting into, and especially with like the operator side of things and also with the RTS units, because it all kind of connects together in terms of like their look and feel. It's just like how fluid the operator feels. I want that to be with the RTS units. When you move them around, it feels more like dynamic and not as like robotic in terms of like when you tell them to go here or go there. And then my last part I'm going to segue into is kind of like some of the, I would say the mixtures with like operator versus juggernaut. And so, yes, we added the MGL to kind of help with that. I'm also working on taking a modified XM109. It's basically a full action 50 caliber. I'm taking it and making it a canister load. And instead of it shooting 50 cal rounds, it's shooting 75 cal rounds. It's not actually physically possible, but it's a game. We're going to make it work, and it's not going to be broken. I'm trying to make it balanced. It's going to be single shot reload, and that's going to be one of the new operator weapons that are getting tied into play. And additionally, on the RTS side of things, I'm going to be tweaking the current M107 for the sniper and having it do a little bit more damage to the Juggernaut, and also the builder unit to kind of make it more viable in those situations as well, to kind of help with that teeter totter of there's 4 Juggernauts and they're wiping out my entire army. So that's one thing that I'm kind of dipping into as soon as I get done with this side of like the infected remodeling.
All right, groovy. Okay, so that pretty much covers up his section. If you guys have any questions for that, I would say just to wait till we get to the Q&A. We're going to try and speed run today so we can get to the Q&A a little bit sooner. So we're going to get into level design in just a bit. I want to show some of the vehicle stuff that I have up on screen. So one of the things that we've been working on going from last week, or me and Derek have been trying to figure out, is getting the vehicles into a point where we're happy with their pathfinding. Because you figure, slowly but surely, we've been kind of working through and setting up like their path avoidance and adding and testing with people on the public Discord. Like I think we've been having a playtest almost every other day at minimum. And that was based off of like, as we get feedback and people are coming to us and talking to us about where they're failing, or we sit in the room and we watch them play the game, or they submit videos or pictures to us. Then we're identifying and kind of improving this corrective logic. So then that way it's a little bit more like understanding of what it needs to do and how it needs to traverse the level. As you can see last week, that was a failure because it would have tried to fit between these 2 points and slam into the truck. And basically like making sure that it understands the landscapables in terms of like, okay, like how is it going to turn? How is it generating its points? When does it need to, because that was a big issue, is slowing down and braking. But also it was stuff like some of the traces were like failing. So let's see how it does this. So we got a failure there, but that's an incredibly hard area to get into. So I'm going to have to landscape that. But like, oh, come on. Hold on. Let me warp her away. Warp. Chelsea, the cursor. Bye-bye. In the water you go. See you never. So it's one of those things where like you figure, like in here, I don't think they can physically get in there because of how claustrophobic it is. We've been kind of tweaking and just kind of adjusting everything from a standpoint of just getting the pathfinding optimal, putting in turn in place, putting in like other things that you'll see in other RTS games like Company of Heroes, and working on like just generally how they calculate their points like this. There's still some use cases like that where we put in where basically they'll snap to face the direction for sake of speed because they know they can't physically get out of that situation in a timely enough fashion. So that was another thing that we sought to put in. The other thing was the reverse. So now they'll reverse up to short move orders. So then that way you can babysit them and get them to go where you want them to go. After a certain distance, they'll turn around and do the 180. That's going to require some playtesting to kind of see what's acceptable from a community standpoint, to kind of refine it. Like you can see there's another use case here where it's just completely failing. Let me just clear that. Let's see, let me keep moving so I can show it. I would say they're getting closer to completion, but it's going to definitely be another couple of days, at least 1 to 2 more days minimally, to work out the minor issues that are still occurring with the pathfinding where you have to clear something. But it seems like most of the issues are their split decision making process of like trying to always, like if I do this, let's see what they do. So I told him to go to that area over there, the courtyard. Let's see what he's gonna do. Okay, that's acceptable. The other issue that we were running into for the playtest is that, let me show you. There is a road nav once it loads, and the blue is the road nav. And the idea is that they'll preference the road nav whenever they can. And we've been slowly but surely just kind of rolling that out and adjusting it and adjusting its weight in terms of how it influences their pathfinding. Yellow are basically points around structures that everyone tries to avoid, including the infected, so they don't get bunched up on edges and corners, so they can keep their formations and keep their semblance of a mob coming at you. Because in the last couple of weeks, we put in a system, well, technically last week, we put in that system for the squad manager where it creates mobs or waves of infected. And we found that if we didn't increase the cost of hugging these objects, they were just all gonna just they were gonna like spread out and like try and like space out more. So that's a challenge we're still working on and just kind of seeking to rectify. But that will kind of help the permanent decision making of like units are not gonna hang around a corner. They'll actually have like a negative extent that they'll try and stay away from the building, and it also helps the combat effectiveness of your units. Because it gives them more, they will not like hug an edge when you tell them to go around the corner unless you explicitly tell them to go to that corner. Like the orange or like that like really weird color yellow doesn't mean don't go there. It just means it's slightly more expensive than the green. So then that makes it to where it's like, oh, hey, if I have to go there, I'll go there. But try and stay away from it because it's kind of a no man's land. But it's a bad area for the infected, and it's a bad area for the CERC in terms of like it doesn't give anyone enough time to kind of group up and mash you, and it tries to keep them in the main lanes that you see of either the green or the blue. And the infantry also use the blue, but when you have a split unit order, they'll always go to the common denominator of that move order. So then that way they'll be like, oh, okay, we need to kind of pick the dumbed down version so everyone can accommodate this move order essentially. But you can see like an example here of the pathfinding where they're just kind of doing their thing and just trying to get around the objects. We also found a lot of playtests where people were basically running into an issue. Yeah, that freezes because of the navigation's rebuilding live. And if you have this window on, it makes navigation building 10 times as expensive because it's drawing extra visualizations. Let me turn that off for the sake of demonstration. But actually, hold on. One thing I do need to do is pause it. We got reports from people saying that they kept trying to go back and forth between both sides interchangeably. So you can see that we had our level designer align this with mobile green nav. So you don't get cars that think they can weave in and out, stay on one side or go to the other. Don't try and like treat it like it's all the same. Because then you got it where they were like, oh, I want to hit this. Oh, I want to hit that one too. I'm gonna hit that one too. And basically like they would do this weird order where they would like just take out every fucking sign along a line, and it was just obsessive. So we kind of reworked the navigation this week based off of the playtests to see if we could kind of iron this out. Now let's see how this does. So this is what Derek's also been working on pretty heavily, is that in the last couple of weeks they failed that. They would fucking just ram straight into this car or they'd ram into this tree and they'd be like, oh, what did I do wrong? So you figure that's one of the things that we saw to kind of like rectify going into this week was like that right there where they turn in place. There's still some improvements that need to happen because it's a little too arcadey. And then the other thing is that when they hit landscapables like that, they're losing way too much velocity. And it's just kind of really weird. That's something else that we got to get with Dimitri and Derek going into next week before we scale up and add more vehicles. So that way we can kind of account for like that, where it's like the whole car just recoils. And it's a little too much. We need to tone it down a little bit. So that's something else that we're hunting down. Then you can see they also put in some new like effects. They put the sound effect in, and they put the little part that breaks off. That's a new little visual thing they put in. Because I know when we get the fire hydrants back in, when you blow those up, water spills out from Legacy. So like that kind of stuff is small little stuff. It's trivial, but it adds more atmosphere to the world. Especially when you actually start putting in damage models for like environmental damage. So it's not just the cars that can damage that. Grenades would damage these. So I'm going to show a little bit more of the Ajax. And then we're going to move on to the Striker and the Mule. One of the things that I was doing talking to people over the course of the week is that the Ajax is great. But like one of the things that they're noticing is that like we really need like a mobile resupply a little bit earlier than I'd like. To not get the Atlas in, because I didn't want to jump to the Atlas because that's a lot of moving parts with the 6 variations that they have. So the compromise was that I was talking to people on the public Discord was getting this baby in, the Mule, or a little bit earlier than I originally intended, and then using that as an incubator for just stress testing in the other systems. You can see there's the resupply radius, so like it resupplies your units as normal. I know some people were talking about making it to where this one was solar paneled. I don't remember who it was. I think it was a Patreon I was talking to one day in the playtest. Um, I might come back to that later on because that was an interesting idea, making it to where like this one charges up and it has a battery, so that way you don't have to have gas. But the only thing is that right now the game doesn't support having a fixed amount of like what am I thinking of? The resupplies don't support resupplying, if that makes any sense. So we were waiting until we got to the MRS, is that we were going to go back to the ammo boxes and the ammo tents, the medical tents, and the mule, and make it to where it costs money to resupply them, because otherwise it's just a bottomless bucket. So when you bought them, you'd get like a requisition of supplies, and then you'd have to pay to replenish it based off of doing it automatically or doing it manually based off of your pricing. You can see right there the example I was talking about, where they just kind of hit things a little too much and it sends them recoiling and flying. I don't like that. So it's something we're going to have to work to rectify going into next week. And again, we're using the Mule, the Striker, and the Ajax to kind of get everything going and get everything moving, get everything functioning. Because each thing kind of stress tests different systems and allows us to just kind of slowly but surely just kind of get it back to legacy and beyond. What else was there? So it was the looking into the other thing. It was the gas. It was the mass and just kind of getting the speed right, the traversal and getting those things that are like all-wheel drive and the physics. So like if I go over here and I go to the Striker, you can see they got the crow in. So this morning there was a GIF that was put out on Discord where it had the crow offset. That was just Derek just finishing his work for the night. And then he off-put it to a technical artist, Dimitri, a little savant there, to basically go in and re-rig and change some of the vehicles, because standards change as you learn things, as you're developing a game. How you did it before is not necessarily how you're going to do it the second time around. So we made some changes in terms of how the vehicles were done that we baked into the Little Bird, the Black Hawk, and the Apache and so. And then we basically like had to make some changes to the Striker to accommodate those rigging changes. So as I mentioned last week, we kind of kidnap him every once in a while from Alcatraz to just kind of help us out to getting all the vehicles functioning. So you have the Striker in, its gun functions, it shoots, it transports units, and obviously it's a bigger weight class in terms of like, it's going to present different issues. It's going to present because you figure, like I was sitting in our room with Cats last night, we were talking about how the front two wheels, these two here, on the other two, are what does most of the actual like traversing and movement. So I was setting those up so they were all-wheel drive or whatever. So then that way, when it turns, only those two turn, and it allows the car to have a little more traction when it's turning and moving, and it's a little more agile. As you can see, this big baby just moving around doing its thing. You can see there's also an issue there. It's possible that was a landscapable, so it didn't understand why they didn't break. So odds are we'll have to look into that going into next week when we have the Striker in, and that's our other test. So we have 3 vehicles in that we've been testing, and these are going to go out to the private play testing build. Oh, it's going to kill itself? Yeah, we do know about that. Sometimes you can get them to drive over the edge and kill themselves. It's a low priority bug, but it's something we got to look into. Is sometimes when you're on a dock, you can get them to drive off if you're really trying to. That's something that's on our bucket list. That's something we need to hunt down and eradicate as well. Let's see how it performs. So it's going on town. It's moseying its way. Let's see how it's going to fit here. I don't think they set the lights up. Oh, they did set the lights up. Okay, cool. Because I put it in the base version last night, and then I passed it off to them to refine and tweak. So let's see what it's going to do here. Okay. Pretty good. Now let's give it something a little bit harder. I know that the Street of Doom is this junction right here is the primary street that we like battle tested on. Is this one? These intersections here. The Grissom military barracks here. And then it's the, what else is there? And then it's just going up and down these hills over here. We just run the gauntlet basically. So let's see if I give him a move order over here. Let's see how he performs. Oh, is going on doing his thing. They do have the ability to transport. The Striker only has the Crow as it stands right now. So yeah, just keep that in mind. You can't get the mortar and you can't get the big gun just yet. That'll come sometime next week, only after we've had more time to refine and fix the issues that you saw earlier in this presentation. The other issue is that we're getting like the single move orders good, but there are going to be situations where when you're issuing the move orders as a group, or you're issuing the move orders of infantry, that they're going to fuck up. They're going to crash on the shit. Right now, we're testing just the individual move orders in isolation, and then sometime next week is when we're gonna start testing the group move orders. Because that's a whole other ball game. That's a whole other level of complexity in terms of basically the pathfinding. Because it's one thing to have this one unit doing its thing by itself. It's another thing to put it in a group. And to see what the formation system is giving them for positions. Because I've seen instances like, where is it? If I tell these, well, actually, I'll finish that one and then I'll show you guys what I mean by when it fails. It's like the formation system is saying, like, what are you doing? You need to be in that spot like 5 seconds ago. And that spot can be inside of another car or it can be inside of a tree. They don't understand they need to ignore that rule and dynamically offset it. So they're using the character code, and the character code isn't as nimble to course correct. So in some cases, when you're giving them like a move order for like 3 or 4 or 5 different vehicles, they're going to fuck up, especially if you start putting infantry in it. So that's something else we're kind of focusing and going into next week. I still think that's going to be at least another week. Next Saturday, to a point where we're happy with it. It's getting there. It's close. I say it's 80%. I say at the pathfinding and the movement, it's 80%, and it's that last 10 to 20% that's going to be the hardest, and just the most time-consuming to get it over the line. Good small little things that add up into a cascading failure, where it's like the way that they do a trace sometimes isn't good enough. Like, let's see what they do. Let's see what he does. So he's going to oh, no, he thought he could hit it, and then the system kicked it and tried to correct it. So it's like little stuff like that, where it's like he probably should have just rotated in place. Real talk, Company of Heroes would have just rotated in place. It just needs to work. It needs to function. It needs to not fail. So the show must go on at the end of the day, in terms of basically getting them where they need to go and lowering the failure rate to non-existent. So, I mean, if you try hard enough, I'm sure you can get a car stuck, but that's on you at that point. That's not on us. If you're trying to tell a car to go somewhere where he physically should not be, or you drop him in a location with the Merlin that he physically should not be in. So let's see how he does this, and then I'll show you guys the fail rate that occurs sometimes, where if you give them a move order with a group, and I'll drop some infantry in so you guys can see that, and then we'll move on to the next section of like, I'll spawn some infantry in so you can also see the crow light them up. But you guys can also jump in and play this yourself. So if you guys played some of the earlier builds in the week, see there's the issue I'm talking about right there. That's garbage. So we got to fix that. But one of the issues that we had earlier in the week also was the preference on road versus like the dirt. Is that they just had like a weird obsession with roads. So that's gone. And they should be a lot more forgiving of like, I want to go down that alley. I want to go to that college campus. Like 3 or 4 days ago, had I given him a move order from here, he would have chose, well, I don't want to go through that. That's too expensive. So he would have done this. And then done that. And that's like, okay, that's really shitty. And it's because the road nav, which is a little too expensive, like in the real world. So we lessen the cost of the road nav. We'd like people to tell us what they think. Do they make the right decisions? Are they preferencing roads when they shouldn't be? Now, this is the fun part. Anyone at all, because we're cooking development builds where everything's exposed. So anybody that wants to do a little bit of backseat game designing and seeing where the roads are and where they aren't can simply just go in and type in show space navigation. And then you can go into the maps and see where the road is and where the yellow is and then where the green is and tell us like, hey, I think that you should have road here. Or I think that this shouldn't be road. X, Y, and Z. That way it kind of gives people some troubleshooting steps that want to get, that you know, maybe the modders, maybe the people that like to tinker a little bit, get behind the scenes of what goes behind a game. And they want to jump in there and see like how things function. So just keep in mind you can do that if you're really so inclined to just kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. We haven't, these debuggers don't show up anymore in cooked builds. We're thinking about having like a wiki or a page where you can go and you can find console commands. So then that way, if you want to debug the game or like type in a command to see what the AI are thinking, what the faction manager is planning for you, like you can see that. And then that way it would help people like that want to get into the nitty gritty. They can tell us. They can be like, hey, like this happens or that happens, or I think this is wrong, or I think that the gaps between attacks are too long in day 5, whatever. Because everything is statistic based off of like the day. You know, as the days increase and different things like that, mutilators turn on and off, and there's a bunch of different pieces moving. Let me see what happens here. I haven't tried this in a while because we don't really ever have that much meaningful gameplay here. Because when I play with people on the Discord, we typically kill Chelsea within 30 minutes now because everyone's like so fucking tryhard. Like we know the game like the back of our hand when we lock that shit down within 30 minutes, unless we intentionally let her spread. So let's see what she does here, and then I'll jump back. They know here. And then you have the garrison, you have all the other fun stuff, the engine, you have the music, all that info, all of the vehicles as well, including the mutt. Ideally, in an ideal world, if you guys don't find anything batshit crazy, or we don't find anything batshit crazy, and we're able to fix the issues that you see that are remaining, like the obvious stuff, then we'll scale up and we'll start getting in all the other weapon variants for the striker, for the Ajax. And the mutt's already done. He just needs his alternate version, which is the mutt with the crow. Because there's a version of this one that's armored, not armored. It has like a gun, so there's no ammo pack on top, and it just has a little crow system on it, and it allows you to run around and machine gun people down. And then you can see there's a resupply radius. So we made some changes to make sure it supported that. Anyway, let me grab these and let's see what happens. So if I grab these and I tell them to go to Chelsea's villa. Let's see what they do. Let's see if they're going to fail. So they're going to form up. And if I had infantry in, what would happen, and when we get to the top, I'll show you guys briefly, is that if I drop, it should let me drop some infantry in live. We don't have like we need to make a Bethesda type console command where you can spawn anything via a dev ID. That's something that we need to kind of do from the back end, because every time we make a new unit in the game, we have to create a new console command for that unit. It's just shitty practice. We need to do what Bethesda does to do a global registry. So you can see there's a failure right there, where the Mule is not staying in lockstep. Like his assigned position was right here, but he was like, for some reason he like kind of caught behind, and then these two are just kind of clipping inside of each other. It's working functionally, but it needs some work. So you can see kind of where they're failing, and then this guy is getting confused. If I had to guess, the formation system is giving him erroneous orders. And he's like, oh my God, where do I go? And now it's fixed because it got to a position where the formation system was like, oh, this is a valid spot. I can move there. Because the problem is that they're using, it just needs more time in the oven to get this working and functioning in the way that we want it to. Because the idea is that the vehicles are always going to form a column. Strongest vehicles in the front, and then the weakest vehicles towards the back. And then the infantry are always going to take up defensive postures around them like a web. And then when you have excess, they do a single file line behind it and fall in. So that way you get one continuous line. So you can see this is the failure right here, is that they're all becoming one. And then they're driving way too slow. It's just an amalgamation of things. So like here, let me just tell them to move here. And then let's see if it's going to play nicely. I'm going to drag in some assaults. Sometimes the engine really hates you doing this live. Let's see if it's going to play nicely. I don't think that was going to work. Hold on. You're not supposed to do this. It's kind of one of those things that are like shunned. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's a better way. It's throwing them over here. It's throwing them at 000. I'm too lazy for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load up these guys as a quick demonstration, so I can show you guys what the other aspect and what we're going to be polishing going into ideally this next week is. Let me move these over here, and then I'll show you guys. So we'll get the little birds in position, F11 for full screen. Sorry, COVID's a bitch. I've had this cough for 2 weeks now. Oh, it's been 3. Lost track. position. I probably should have just did slow-mo of 10. That does make the physics engine unstable, so maybe not play with fire today, especially when I'm trying to demonstrate something. I like rubber band through a fucking wall because the physics engine's not supposed to run at that frame rate ever. Okay, so you can go and fuck off there, and you can go and go there. Bye-bye, see you in hell. Okay, so let's say I select these guys. Let's see how they do. So they're going to form up. And this is kind of what we need to continue polishing going into next week, where you can see they're kind of forming like a protective buffer. So each vehicle has like preset points. It doesn't really help the case that these are all inside of each other. It might be an issue with like how they're dynamically determining the bounds and determining the safe margin of how far they need to be away from each other. But, you know, let me just tell you, go away. And let's see what happens if it's a bigger vehicle. Let's see if they still fail. Oh yeah, he's definitely not getting enough oomph. Because like you can see the position's been cleared right here for the striker. Because in an ideal world, you have your convoy. Where it'd be like, if I had more units, your striker is going to take up a position right here. And then they're going to take up positions on the left and right and guard it. And then at that point, you're going to get like this squished together. And they're going to fall in on a line right behind the last vehicle. So if the striker manages to catch up before they reach their destination, and I think to a certain point, there's going to be some clipping regardless because of how complicated our level is, where like some vehicles and infantry are going to go inside of each other. That's not absolutely fatal. It's just trying to get them in their proper location at least 80 to 90% of the way. Because like you can see right here, this is a colossal failure right here. And then they're rotated in place. Let's see if it's going to work. Because that was the other thing that Derek worked on, was like getting a car to face the proper direction. Let's see. Yeah, right there. So that's what he got in last night, where you can rotate and drag it. And then the vehicle, if they can't reach that orientation right off the rip, they're going to basically course correct and get it in there. And you can kind of see the thing that I was tweaking where the first two tires are what control the actual, like, how much you can turn left and right. It's going to reach its destination, and then it's going to rotate in place, just like Company Heroes. So let's see if I can show this. Let's see if it's going to play nicely with just one vehicle. You can see that's the other issue, is they don't wait. Is that they don't care. So like you figure like technically they should probably slow down. We got to figure out some kind of ramping system for that. I guess at the end of the day, it also depends on how much of a priority this is a concern to the community. At the, you know, from a developer standpoint, you always want to make everything look sexy and everything look so pretty. But I mean, if this isn't like a big deal to a lot of people and they'd prefer that we just focus on fixing the crashing and the pathfinding, it's something that we could always polish or refine a little bit more, and people could just, I guess they're okay with like them sometimes walking inside of each other. It's going to kind of be like putting it out there and seeing what people say, and just talking to people on voice. Because you can see there's an example right here where it's like he should have already have sped ahead, they should have already have separated, and he should have already have had his lane clear. So like right now he's going to take up his rightful spot, and then they're going to, yep, there he goes. But then the infantry aren't speedy. Oh, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Oh, you know what? They're using the Ajax spots. That's what that is. The designer forgot to set up 2 more points. Because we figured they're local points that are set up here and here that are missing. And he's going off of the proportions of the Ajax. If you look at it, something wasn't configured or tweaked. Yeah, because these were literally added in on the 11th hour last night. So like you figure, yeah, they're using the Ajax proportion. So something's either failing on the dynamic bounds calculation, or something isn't being set up properly for the pre-stuff. Because it looks like, to me, that looks like they're operating like it's an Ajax. So technically, once that's fixed, then you can get 4 running on the sides, and then the 2 in the back. Is that where I told them to move? Oh, that is where I told them to move. Oh, let's see if it does it. Sometimes you can get them to drive off the thing, and it's hilarious. Oh, yeah, he's going to go for it. Wait. No, he failed. Oh, yeah, he doesn't know what to do. Yeah, he didn't know what to do. Every single check must have failed in that one situation. It might just be the way that those rocks are made. So I just discovered a new bug. Because we hadn't gotten this one reported yet. Yeah, because he's not, it might, hold on. Live debugging. It's gonna freeze because you're not supposed to do this. What's that collision like? It looks like the collision is actually form-fitting. Yeah, it is actually. It doesn't even create a ramp, but there is some generalizations there where a human being is gonna have to go through. That might have been auto-generated. But what might be confusing it, hold on. I hate when it does that. Whenever you show collision in the engine, it causes the CPU to freak out because it's like, oh, I gotta render all this debug now. Let's see. Oh. Oh, wow. Is that what I think it is? F8? Let's just look under the skirt. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's level design error. This object doesn't have proper collision. So let's take a picture. Either that collision got corrupted when we were porting it over from legacy, or it just was never created and it wasn't properly vetted. So let me go ahead and report that to the relevant party, and we'll get that taken care of going into next week. And I'm gonna have them do an audit on every fucking rock now, because every time I find that shit, I hunt them down, and we're gonna have to basically just look under every nook and cranny, because these rocks are from the Mega Scan pack, from the same thing that the Mandalorian and random other movies and games use nowadays. So like, it's possible these rocks were put in and then someone assumed there was collision, or the collision got corrupted at one time or another. Because that's, wait, but I just saw collision, which means that the collision's on, but it's not affecting nav. Oh, that I know what that is. Yep. I know exactly what that is. The collision's there, but it doesn't have the proper flag on for affecting navigation. There's two different flags you have to put in the game. Let me see if I'm right. I'm generally curious now. It's tilting me, so I know who to chew out. F8. Go to the asset. Open it up. Nav. No, it's set correctly. So it's probably corrupted collision. Yeah, and it has collision. The plot thickens. Could just be a bug in the engine. So I'll have to just get back to that, because everything was done correctly. They put the collision on, they put the navigation on, and it affects nav. Weird. Okay. Well, I'm gonna earmark that. Well, I've already taken a picture to earmark it, and we're gonna have to force an audit on all of our rocks now. And on paper, that was done correctly. But something weird's afoot. It could be any number of things that are causing it to do that, and I'm going to have to investigate that with the boys going into Monday. Here's another failure right there. All right, so that kind of concludes that. And if you have questions for this, hold your questions. We're going to get to the Q&A in just a second. Oh, we ran out of gas. Fuck. Oh, there's the formation system, too. It's a little velociraptor, because I love Jurassic Park. Who doesn't? So, like, that's the little actor they chase after. And there's like virtual points that are in the map that are like dynamically generating at all times that are like, this is your spot. Stay in your spot. And then that's what I'm talking about, where it's like, it looks like it's also not canceling out when the gas runs out. So if this guy suddenly got gas, he'd floor it to catch up to that fucking velociraptor. You guys can't see this in a Crook build because it's only allowed in the editor, but you can see like that's a bug. Because when the vehicle runs out of gas, well, actually, hold on. Technically, it's not a bug, because if you had people that still had gas, they should still complete their goal. And then it's a you problem for sending them out in a situation where they didn't have gas. But in the case of where everyone in the formation runs out of gas, we should probably pause the formation. I'll have to think about that. Because technically, the plus of that is when he gets the gas again, he's going to remember his last move order and move to wherever little velociraptor has moved to, right there. So I guess there's a pro and a con to everything. Maybe I'm just overanalyzing it and we'll leave it the hell alone, because technically some people probably just want it that when you move an Atlas or a vehicle over here and you resupply it, it's just going to take off to where it originally was told to go and you don't have to remember. But we'll have to see what people have to say. Maybe you guys will have an opinion that differs than mine, that's like, oh wait, no, but what about these situations? Or that's kind of annoying because of X, Y, and Z. So Yeah, exactly. For the guy that mentioned it on YouTube, who doesn't love velociraptors? They're badass. So, okay, that kind of summarizes what we've been working on for the vehicles. It's kind of touch and go. We're slowly but surely getting it to a point where we're happy. You guys can play it for yourselves and see where they fail and where they succeed. Um, if you run into anything crazy or anything you want to document, please record it. Don't just say vehicle broke. I'm going to ignore it and move on with my day. It doesn't help me. I can't fix that. So if you like run into an issue, you got pictures, you got video, you get on Discord, share screen it with me. Like tag me in the general chat and be like, hey Dark, I was trying out the private build, which anyone can opt into after this HQ and play with their friends or play with themselves, single player or whatever, and be like, hey, I ran into X, Y, and Z, here's a video. Or I can't record, my computer's too low end, whatever, I don't have OBS. Just message me and I'll get in a channel, share screen it, take a GIF for you, and then disappear. You know? Totally chill, don't give a shit. You know, so just one of those. Just keep that in mind if you do run anything weird. Because again, we're trying to get to a point by the end of the month where all the vehicles are in, and we're on the airstrikes. We want to get the doctrines by the end of the month, but it's going to come down to just basically, are people happy with the pathfinding that we have in the vehicles as they stand right now? And, you know, spending the next week hunting down the last remaining issues, continuing to test out those other vehicles that we put in, the Striker and the Mule and the Ajax. We'll get the other weapons in for all of them. Keep in mind, the mortar is not going to be the way it was before. It's going to be the way the MRS was. The mortar and Legacy, so this is the fun part. Technically, we're doing the MRS by doing the Striker mortar variation. Because in the old Legacy, so next week we'll try and fit this in regardless. But like, where's the Striker? Where are you? Where have you gone? Ah, there you are. So you figure like how it used to work before is that we'd have the module and the back would change out and then the crow would go away. And then we would physically spawn a VFX here and then we would spawn a grenade in the air and then drop it. And then it would land and kill them. We're not doing it that way anymore because the MRS and Legacy was an experiment of doing real world ballistics and real world like trajectories and all the other fun stuff. So we know what the math is now. We know how to do it now, where you literally can like physically spawn an object in line of sight manners. So if you park this under this overpass, you're not hitting shit. It's just gonna go straight up, hit that wall, maybe even kill everyone below you, depending on the burst of the actual, like whatever, you know, how we ever set up the mortar. So that's one of the things that we're going to be setting up this time around differently and using what we learned with the MRS to roll that into the Striker and to roll that into the artillery turret thing that you can build. Basically, we're saving that for doctrines. Again, I want to emphasize that because I get this all the time in the Steam reviews and on the Steam forums that we're like simplifying the game or dumbing it down or doing some other bullshit. The whole point is a logical rollout where we're slowly but surely getting everything in from Legacy and making it better. And not overwhelming ourselves by trying to do everything in one go and then failing at it horribly like we did in Legacy, making the same mistakes again. So, you know, when we do the Striker, we'll get like the prototype in so that like, you know, it works. It's the prototype for the MRS. And then all we do now is copy that version, duplicate it for the MRS, and now we have the MRS in, and it just works. Just by doing that variation of the mortar. So you can kind of see why we're doing things in the way that we're choosing. And then the Apache is the incubator for the Abrams. So technically I could put the Abrams in right now, but we want to get the handling a little bit better, and then we need to get a couple of more landscapeable objects in because I'm going to be working on getting these fences knockovable. Adding in, well, those are done, but adding in like the fences, I got to get with Dimitri, and we have to get some chaos stuff for these, so these can be destroyed, these walls. It's that. It's these. It's these wood. No, those aren't wood. Where are you? Where were they? Where were they moved to? I think those wood walls were moved only to Half Moon Bay. Yeah, those wood walls aren't used anymore. Obviously, these will be destroyable. Those are obviously destroyable. Where has thou if gone? Yeah, I don't think we have those wood walls anymore in this version. Ignore the water not being here. It's a bug on my computer. It doesn't happen in a cook build. It's a driver issue. And then these. But in this map, we don't have the wood fences, so it's the other map I'm talking about, Half Moon Bay. So just keep in mind, we're going to be converting over those, converting over the trees, converting over the street lights next week. And like, me and Derek are going to be like fucking busy bees, just running around, converting over the rest of the objects and setting up the weight classes. It's one of the most important things that we wanted to do. Is like if I press escape and I go to like a tree and I hit F11, if I am not going to take forever to find it, I always forget the name. You can see right here, we have like a whole system set up that's replicated for like, does it get destroyed? What's the destruction object? What's the weight class? Is it a default, a heavy, or a super heavy? You know, like a heavy is like a juggernaut. How much impulse do we get when we send it flying? Do we swap it to a static mesh when it gets destroyed? Do we swap it to a physics mesh when it gets impacted initially? Do we play it? What kind of a Niagara effect do we play? Is there a physics mesh? Like, it's basically all the stuff that a designer would go in and configure. So then that way we can kind of get everything set up. And we just kind of been staging that and getting everything set up and using, again, the street lights, these babies, to basically like field test it and get everything set. So if I scroll down, you'll see what I mean. Well, you can see it's configured where like when it gets destroyed, it switches to that broken version. And then the version that gets spawned in for the impact. And then the VFX that plays for the electrical spark when it gets broken. And then the sound it plays and then the distance it plays. Oh, God. Fucking COVID. Fucking killing myself talking too much. So you figure it's one of those things where like just keep in mind like we got to fix that issue before I scale it up next week and I add in all the other variations. I have to fix that thing where they go flying. Like even the striker goes flying from hitting this little derpy thing, and like even from games like GTA or whatever, like you should just be able to keep moving. Like it's weird that the whole vehicle recoils, and I think it's an issue with the mass of the vehicles themselves versus the mass of these objects. Is they're too close to each other. So it makes it where the physics engine's like, oh, I'm going to send you flying. Because the mass of this is what, 64 kilograms? No, 84 kilograms. And then the striker is like, oh, wait, you can't even sample that here, I think. You have to go to the, it's a whole thing. You have to go to the physics asset, and the bodies add up. It's like it's a calculation. So I have to vet that later. But that's something I got to look into with the boys and figure that out. So that way we can iron that out and get it to where, like, when a striker goes through an object, it's not going to, like, fling all over like a fucking slinky. So you guys can kind of see the issue that we're running into there that we need to fix going into next week. Let's see what else is there. So from a level design standpoint, for Efren and just for Dimitri's helping us out for just kind of going through and vetting the vehicles. He's still working on Alcatraz. I'll briefly go over and show the work that he has there. It's not too much because we've been stealing him almost every other week, or every other day, practically. I'm definitely going to trigger an audit of all the rocks, because there's something odd going on with some of these rocks and how they're interacting with the navigation mesh. Where, like, that should be closed off, and it's not. So we're going to have to look into that, because there's something weird going on. The navigation should not be building in these areas. So it's some kind of weird oddity with the asset itself. So we're going to look into that. We're going to audit that. Ignore this. That's the helicopter nav. That's something else entirely. Because then you can see it's causing issues like this where the vehicle could go up here and shoot people. I guess that's okay in some cases, but we're going to have to vet that on a per-case basis as we just kind of work on the rocks and figure out which areas make sense that a vehicle could physically drive up and which ones don't, because it's really not going to be able to get back down. Let's see, what else is there? That's pretty much it for Efren. He's just kind of going through. He was lining all these buildings because you basically just have to go to every asset and then manually create a volume. I think there was like 300 assets in the entire game he had to go through. So he's just kind of going through and creating these, checking the collision, checking the navigation, and then working with people on Discord and on Steam to address level design issues. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the level design here. Let me go ahead and load up the other map. Ideally, he'll get to a point by the end of this week where there's nothing else left for him to do for like auditing here and auditing. There's nothing really left to do for Angel besides till we open that up. That area is functionally ready to play. This area is not going to be playable until, because we're holding off on Angel, Treasure, and San Francisco North until we can have some dedicated time to make sure the infected can island hop. Because there's no systems in place and no mechanisms programmed in. So that's something we have to get to and make sure we do that correctly. So we'll introduce those islands as playable, ideally, probably in January at this point. We'll see if we can meet our goal by the end of December. But there's a lot going on in December for the vehicles and for the doctrines. And that's going to take up 90% of the month. It's getting in the airstrikes, getting the other missing abilities for the classes on the ground and for the vehicles. Like the Chinook's ability to carry vehicles, like that kind of stuff. Small little stuff that just there's legacy or things we wanted to add a legacy that weren't put in that are sitting in an asset pack, or not asset, but they're sitting in a repository of shit that we've made and we've just been sitting on for a long ass time. And then the ideal thing is that sometime by the end of like the next week or two, he'll start working on this, and then we'll eventually shift over Krieg to help him out on populating this, because this is going to be the main course that we need to kind of get to a point where I want to, crossing my fingers, I want to get it to a point where the bridge is in, the navigation's functioning, so you guys can at least start to play on this island via an opt-in where it spawns Chelsea preferably here, and it'll just be untextured, and it'll get textured over time. And then if you don't want to play in this area and just kind of experiment and play, with it be untextured, like Subnautica in the early stages of early access, where they had like certain areas, the further you went away were untextured. And then they slowly but surely textured in the game over time for those like excess areas. So that's something that we're going to be like stress testing and just kind of see if we can roll out by December, because you still have this bridge here. So regardless, if we don't make it destroyable, we can still unlock this area, make it an opt-in on the custom game options, and make it to where like Chelsea will spawn here. Because once we have that, she's going to spawn here 90% of the time. Well, 100% of the time, really. She's going to stop spawning on Treasure Island and on Angel Island and spawn pretty much on Treasure Island 100% of the time, because this is where the millions of people are. This is the main course. This is the main dinner. So that's something that we're going to be like trying to transition into by the end of the month. And that's just an auxiliary goal. So just keep in mind we're working on that. Let's see. Is there anything else that I'm missing or breezing over? Let me check my notes. Then we're going to open it up for a Q&A on YouTube and on Steam and on Discord. Hold on. I showed that, but I'm just going to demonstrate it again. So this is what Derek is also working on. Like, this is what I showed previously. It was slowed down. We need to make sure it doesn't feel too arcadey. So it's one of those things where, like, that's one of the things that we're doing as like a stopgap. If you get the vehicle into a situation where it physically just can't get out. If you've ever seen like Austin Powers, where it's like he keeps going back and keeps going forward, it's just, yeah, we don't want that. No one wants that. The show must go on. And so it's one of those things where it's like we need to kind of like get that a little more refined. I mean, you saw stuff like this in the actual channel. So it's like basically we've just been testing that. You saw that earlier. There's nothing new to show there. Is there anything else? Yeah, that's pretty much it for that aspect. One thing I will say is that one of the other things that I've been working on this week is improving the general performance of the game and turning a lot of systems over to space them out a bit more, because like you figure when we made the AI a little bit more expensive how they compute attack points, it made them a little too expensive when an attack wave is spawning in. There's still some things that I'm profiling and testing going into next week. If people are still having performance regressions or issues, tell me. Post on Steam, post on Discord, jump in a channel. I think there was one person that told me a couple days ago on Discord, and I need to link up with him and cook him a private build. I think Riff and a couple other people were telling me it's gotten better, but it's like it's varying hardware. So I need sample sizes. I need people to come forward and tell me, yeah, it plays horribly. Win. Okay, great. So then that way we can get together, collaborate. I can cook a build for you in some cases, and then we could be like, oh, is it better? Is it worse? Okay, great. And then that gives me the data I need to go and basically, do the thing. So just keep in mind that's a thing that's continuing from last week going into this week, or next week, sorry. And I'm trying to hunt down the remaining issues when it comes to performance regressions. It seems like the remaining ones are when the attack waves are spawned. So I'm hoping to kind of get that ironed out for the remaining ones. A lot of them were cut out. A lot of them were solved this week, but there's still some issues here and there for some lower spec computers I need to fix. There is an issue that I'm aware of for the squad manager, is that in the previous weeks, I set up a system where sometimes the infected, well, they always cluster together. So you see huge mobs and waves of infected where like you have a street like this, they'll spread out like massively and they'll charge at you. And it makes the game really hard. But in some cases, they can sometimes like fail and they'll like stop outside your base and then you have to go out there and like poke at them to get them to attack you. I'm looking into that. I got a little bit sidelined with some last minute bugs and issues, so I wasn't able to resolve that on Thursday, Friday. I'm hoping to kind of squeeze that in as like one of the last auxiliary items before I move on to like the landscapables and some of the remaining performance issues. So just keep in mind that is something that I'm basically like looking into. I'm aware of it, and I'm seeking to rectify that early next week. What were you gonna say, Creek? I interrupted you. I think you were about to say something.
Huh? Oh, no, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
I was just
You're good.
throwing you off.
You're good. So I think that pretty much sums it up for the progress report for this week. Again, I'm adamant that we can get to the point of wrapping it up and getting the formations and the other stuff in next week. But we're going to see just how things go, and if it takes longer, it's going to take longer. You guys want the pathfinding right? I read the reviews. I see what people have to say. It's going to take the time it takes to get it to the point where it doesn't fuck up. It doesn't get you killed. So it's very complicated. It's very hard, and there's a lot of fail cases where things just happen that you test in isolation and it doesn't. And then this microcosm of like this combination with that combination breaks it. So just give us a little more patience there. We're working through the issues. If you want to help out, get the playtester role on Discord. I ping it probably every couple of days. If you want to come in, you want to play with me, you want to play with some of the other devs, you want to play with the patrons and some of the other people, it's a great way to just sit down and just kind of, play with us and have a good time and just talk about the game. So there's that recourse if anyone wants to kind of help contribute their time and just help us find the pathfinding fuck-ups. Yeah. Okay. So, is there anything else, Krieg or Michael, you guys want to bring up before we move into the Q&A part? Okay, Krieg?
Oh, I'm good.
I got my PC back. It did blow up Darth City. It's just like the echoes, the electrician just. So I will be working.
Oh
back
yeah,
on the
Krieg's
map
been
again.
MIA for the last week or two because the
I'm back on
electrician
there.
came over and destroyed his computer, so that was fun, Hawaii. So, like he was saying, he's going to be going and working on that other map, and ideally we'll have something to show next week or the week after that to just show some progress, and then give you guys another pandemic map you can play. Because that's the biggest thing is just kind of, we have like 4 pandemic maps right now, and then technically his will be the 5th. And then at that point, there's a good enough offering there where we're like, okay, that's good. Let's have him do some horde maps or some small things just to kind of replace the RTS co-op test map, that eyesore. And then we're good. That should be good enough for horde versus pandemic. Everyone's happy. There's enough content there. And then the level designers efforts are going to be on San Francisco North, but Creek will join him on San Francisco North in the next month or so after he kind of helps get a little more icing on the cake, but a little more variety to the missions. All right, so anyway, we're going to move into the questions. So if you mentioned a question previously on YouTube, on the Steam store, on Discord, mention it again, because I sure as hell did not see it. I've been focused on just presenting on the screen. And obviously I'm not going to get like rowdy. I didn't see it. So write your question again if you had one. If you want to raise your hand on Discord, you're welcome to. On the YouTube chat, same thing. If you have a question, I'm going to scroll through it and see if I see anything. But yeah, feel free to ask your things. I'm going to start my timer. We're going to do 10 minutes. If it's not a lively conversation, we'll wrap it up at that point. So let's see what we got here for questions. So I see one on Silent Song. So Silent Song asks, we are getting skins for the vehicles, so we are getting any for the infantry uniforms. Hey, Michael, a question for you. Did he die?
Oh, I think he walked away.
No, someone's at the door.
Oh,
Infantry uniforms. I don't think we have anything planned for that right now. Just for the complexity of infantry, of how they're made. It's not as simple as just applying a mass. They're all baked down. That'd probably be something late next year that we can kind of experiment with. But as it stands right now, there's no plans with it, just for the complexity side of things with how they're
Question.
implemented as is. Because the vehicles, it's
Well, we
kind
need the
of
mask
standard.
in the vehicles. I mean, the thing with the characters is so complicated with the hair and the eyelashes and the opacity mask and all the other stuff.
Well, it's more so of like how the vehicles are textured now. It's not as simple as like they just have a diffuse and all that other stuff. It's like all generic, like it's all mask. Like it's very complicated of
Oh
how the
yeah, but
vehicle system works. In terms for the characters, it would be
I
it's
think
just
that when we talked about it before,
uh
and I think Michael might have forgotten, is it was along those lines of like, hey, let's look at something like that next year, like after like towards the end of early access, and let's do it as something along the lines like a total mesh swap, because that's easier instead of just doing a texture.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just like uniform, like infantry uniforms, like I would definitely say like mesh swaps. So I wouldn't expect like camos necessarily. Like there might be camos along the mesh swap, but not like, oh, I'm gonna go with olive camo or like multicam or urban. I would say that's more of a stretch goal, but I definitely can see like mesh swaps
Yeah, but
being
you could
more
even
of a
do
thing.
a mesh swap for a different camo, technically. So, so it's one of those things where like there's a
Yeah.
room for it, but it's one of those things where it's more of an auxiliary goal at this point. Because I know that towards the end of this month, early next month, after all the vehicles are in, before we do the airstrikes and all the other fun stuff, we need to get the support camos back in for the vehicles, for the helicopters and the ground vehicles and the new vehicles. So that would be something that we do. We get that in there. So that way people that bought their support packs on Steam can use that content again on the rebuild. And then at that point, I would put any kind of cosmetic or visual off the table, paid or non-wise, until we get to a point where the game is complete and I'm happy and the community is happy from a sense of what's the word I'm thinking of? It's like basically like the viability of the game, the amount of content in it. And then at that point, we can look into like doing that. Because I get that all the time. I get questions all the time like, add this, add that. That'd be great if you did this. Like, it's not, I'm very conscious of adding things that aren't mission critical to like what we had in Legacy that are just like, okay, that's nice to have, but we don't need that right now. So like that is a perfect idea on our wish list of something we need to look at later down the line. Oh yeah, I'm sure Felix is gonna grab all of our vehicles and drive them off the dock. I already know if he's listening on YouTube right now, I'm sure he's plotting. Because you could literally like if you go to like, we know this dock is an offender. Is like this dock over here. If you tell your vehicle to go here, and you try really, really hard, you can get it to fall off. We already know. That's why we put the turn in place. So the turn in place should accommodate and fix that, but there still is some last minute corrections we need to do to their tracing, where we make their traces a little bit more expensive and we start doing traces that are not just what's in front of you, what's to the left of you, what's to the right of you, and what's on the navigation, but what is down. Is there a drop there? If there is a drop, invalidate going left, invalidate going right, turn around in place, salvage the situation. So it's like, that's one of the things that we need to kind of do for like the small little situations where like, where could you even kill yourself like that? Couldn't do it here with those fences. Maybe if you try hard enough. It's probably along here you can kill yourself, maybe. And then there, definitely here. Maybe. Maybe you can kill yourself here. It's possible. Somebody will prove me wrong. Somebody will prove me true. I don't know. We'll see. Question. So YouTube. Let's give some love to YouTube. Let's see what we got here. I see a lot of comments here. Let's see. Okay, so I can't say your name. I'm gonna try my best. Consul Lunatic, B2 asks, right, right, lads. I'm back with another question. Have you considered adding infected infiltrators? So that is something that we're going to be looking into when we get back to dynamic civilian groups and the whole civilian evacuation aspect of things. Is that's going to be like January, February? But you figure I don't want to rush that. So like when we get to like civilian evacuation, primarily, we had those asymptomatic carriers. They were basically like plants that would like turn when they were on your helicopter, or they would turn when they were in your base and they were going for like a mass infection event. So that was like our infiltrator per se, and you could basically pull them aside and shoot them once you got the actual like options in on the actual evacuation. So in our mind, those are the infiltrators, and those are the people that are trying to sneak into your base to either kill your units or kill the civilians and make you a problem. So that's that in a nutshell there. Let me see what we have for Discord, what we have for time. If we have more questions, I'll reset the clock one more time. Silverus Gaming said, could just make a command for a test NPC. That is something that me and Derek were talking about, is making some kind of like console command that anyone can use. That you like in Skyrim or in Fallout, where you could type in like spawn and then an ID, and then that ID would be like, yeah, and then wherever, yeah, and then wherever your mouse is, it would spawn a test unit in. So then that way you'd be like, okay, cool, like I can test something quickly for the devs, or if I want to just fuck around, test, spawn in 3 strikers, you know, you could do that. Maybe have an option. Definitely make it only host only, or maybe offline only. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I have to kind of give the devs and see how we protect that for like only the host could probably be able to do that, but or maybe make it a custom flag. I don't know, but that's a good idea. Preve, you are horrible. Juggernaut though, blow up, guys win. Maybe later. Okay, so YouTube, what do we got? So Multi-Gaming Networks 03 asks, I know the Q&A is next, so my curiosity is, have you guys worked out how to lay out the combined Treasure Island? Angel Island, North San Francisco area, any map references used? So it's based off of real life. So as it stands right now, in my mind, this is the final gameplay area. That's it right there. No more and no less. So I want to get that northern area filled in with like the forest from the Planet of Apes, and then just figure out getting the most of our efforts going to go into this area here, because we need to focus a lot of time into making all of these variations of structures. I think it was 4 the other day that was like running around with the camera and realizing just how big this is. Like if we actually spent some time in RTS and looking around, just kind of looking around all the nooks and crannies, this is going to be a massive area. I mean, it's all the areas in the game times 3 to 5. So I mean, it's a lot of moving parts. So like this is going to be where I think 90% of the gameplay is going to shift to once we get this area filled in around like December, January. We open it up for people to test. And then at that point, like, the other areas are just like little playgrounds, little areas that you got to go to turtle in or hide in when you're getting your ass whooped. So we have a question on Discord. Let me see. So again, that's customizations and all of that. That's off the table for right now, but that's something later on to look into. A flamethrower for an operator or any kind of operator weapons. Riff, in our community on Discord, is working on a master list of community suggestions for the operator. So I'm debating the best way of going about this, because I know Winter did one previously for the custom game options. Is a Google Excel sheet or some kind of thing that we can share on Discord and on Steam that people can leave their feedback of what they feel the operator still needs. I know he's floated it around the Patreons. I know he's floated around the people that we play the most with on Discord. Like, we know they play operator. So I asked him, like, hey, can you make a list of, like, what you feel is missing from the operator? Just go around and talk to some people, petition them, see what they say. And he made a list. He didn't edit it. He sent it all to me, and then it was up to me to look at it and be like, oh, okay, this is what people are saying. So I need to take that list that they made, turn it into a Google sheet, or OneDrive sheet, and then I'm going to share that ideally in the next week or two. Because again, around the time of his doctrines, me and Michael and Derek need to get in there and do some last minute operator polish. Just kind of put that the last paint on the on the wall. Get it to a point where we're happy with that system. So just keep in mind, like that's a thing that you're gonna see on Steam and on Discord next week or two. And I gotta get with them and just figure out what is the best way of presenting that information in a quick and effective manner. Let me see what else I have here for questions. Let's see. So other infected types are just going to be the blow-up guy. Sorry, the juggernaut. Oh, fuck. There's a juggernaut. One juggernaut ability we still have to add in, which is the ability for him to burrow and dig. It was the juggernaut's charge ability. It was Leviathan, and then it was the birds. Those are the three that we need to get in there. And Leviathan's going to be implemented completely different than how he was in Legacy. The sweet spot for that is going to be right after Doctrines. Around the same time we do the operator polish and the right before we do a civilian evacuation. So that's the other infected down the pipeline. Other stuff is off the cards for right now until we just kind of focus on getting what we have already situated. Now, I will say that Michael and I are working on adding in some SWAT and police and National Guard infected that have mutilators of more damage for melee, more damage resistant for bullets, so that way it'll add a little more range to the standard infected that you see. So that will help out somewhat to kind of get some more like nuance there to like the combat and the shooting and everything else. Let's see. What's this? Let me see for Discord. I don't think there's anything new for... Oh, flamethrower. So Digital asked the question about the flamethrower. I can't answer that yet. I need to get with Michael on that because the biggest thing is there's about 20 weapons for the operators that are missing. We added in the MGL that wasn't originally on the list as a counter against the Juggernaut, but technically they get like their own M107. And they get like a bunch of other things that are just make it to where you could spec them into like that's your armor killer, that's your like your AoE killer. Like you can make them heroes that facilitate your squads on the ground, kind of like what Hawkins does, where he builds like 30 operators and replaces all of his units with them. Like he doesn't even build assaults or heavies or snipers anymore. He just makes operators and level them up. Let's see what we have here for questions. We'll do 2 more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. So let's see what we got here. Oh, so I guess, so multi-gaming network, you have looked at San Francisco North and you've kind of seen just how massive it is. Yeah. My estimation is the last time we did an operator run from one side of the map to the other, it took about 4 to 5 minutes fast forwarded, which means that it would take probably about 8 to 12 minutes to walk from one side of San Francisco North to the other. Because when I was testing, it was from here to here. And that took me about 6 minutes on fast forward. So you multiply that times 2, say it's about 12 minutes. But that doesn't have combat, doesn't have logistics. There's a bunch of other things that factor into that, where it's like just going from point A to point B becomes like an actual fight for survival kind of deal. So John Carvine asked the question, and we'll wrap this up as the last question, potentially, yeah, is that he asked the question about what's the next vehicle. So let me think about that for a second. We got the Striker, we got the Mule. Striker is a prototype for the mortar. It does the prototype for the main cannon. It's the prototype for the crows. The JLTV, it would probably be the JLTV. Adding in the mutt, because those are 2 easy wins. Putting in the mutt is a copy of the Mule, which is a gun. Putting in the JLTV is a copy of the Ajax with different stats. It's a little bit faster. It has a little more armor. It's the upgrade. So we'd probably do those 2 next. And then at that point, we'd have almost half the vehicles in. And then it would be, well, at that point, we would have already done the striker variants. So those technically aren't new vehicles. Let me think. What should we do next at that point? It would either be the Atlas, the Abrams, the MRS, or the Bradley. So I would probably do the Atlas because we need more logistics of the gas, of the other stuff moving, and get the MO runners and all of them back in. And then at that point, we'd either do the MRS, the Bradley, or the Abrams, just to kind of bite off something. Ideally, we'd start the Abrams sometimes not this coming week, but the week after that. So I would imagine the super weapons would probably be like next week, if that makes sense. So this week right now, like, let me open up my calendar. So like, calendar. So like the 7th to the 13th, everything but the super weapons is what I would imagine in my mind. Work on the formations, work on the group movements, work on like the AI for them, get the mutt and the mule and the other striker variations in, get the JLTV in, try and get the Atlas and probably finish the week with the Atlas and nothing else pops up crazily. And then the 15th to the 19th would probably be the Abrams, the Bradley, and the MRS. At that point, all the vehicles are in the game and they're done. Yes, they're done. And then at the same time as we're putting them in, we're doing the abilities for them. So it's not just like put the vehicle in and you're done. It's like the Abrams had 2 abilities, the Bradley had 2 abilities, and I think the MRS had some abilities too. So that's kind of what we're kind of guesstimating as the rough timeline. And then sometime, because it should only take us 2 to 3 days, technically, after we get all the legwork. We did the striker and the mortar. Okay, the MRS is done. We did the Apache and the striker. So most of the legwork for the Abrams is technically done. And then the Bradley is just using the Abrams as a chassis, and then we edit it, change out the weapons, add the tow ability, all the other fun stuff. So technically, ideally, in an ideal world, every vehicle would take 1 day for the 15th, 16th, 17th. So ideally, we get to a point around the 16th to the 17th, ideally, if no, again, plans only survive so long till, contact with the enemy kind of shit, is around the 16th to 17th is when we would aim to start the doctrines and do the airstrikes and all the other upgrade shit. So that way we'd round out the month of like, say, what is that? 17th to like the 24th, because technically the Christmas tile is right around there. And then we'd round out that 17th to the 24th, putting in the passives. Because think about how quickly the custom game options came together. The custom game options are effectively doctrines. They're just emulators and multiplayers that change live. So we've already prototyped and figured out how to do the doctrines from doing the custom game options. So it's one of those things where the hardest part for the doctrines and all that stuff is just going to be the UI. Which we'll work with Winters on. So it's going to be a tight month, but I think that by the end of December, a lot of people are going to be happy in terms of basically just the value proposition, the content that's in the game, where it is, looking back from where it is now to what it was a year ago. Because again, we're trying to hit that January 6th deadline of at least, worst case, the only things that are missing are civilian evacuation, dynamic civilian groups, not the end of the world. We have January and February to figure that out, take our time, and do it correctly. So that's kind of the climate we're going into to kind of answer your question. For what you're asking, digital, I'm not going to add any new vehicle types, not yet. I don't want to rock the boat. I want to get what we have already done, and then we can look at the stuff that what you're saying, potentially either around the doctrines time for polish, if it's for small little minor stuff like having because somebody was mentioning having a Merlin that resupplies. So it only resupplies when you land, and it'll give out gas and ammo and healing, and then you can land it, and then you can fly it around. But to put that system in, we need to do a couple of other systems before it, where it's like, by adding in the Mule on Friday, now we need to add in the ability for resupply points to buy supply. Because like if I go to like, I'll show you guys. What was it called? Let's go to the barracks. So say I go to the barracks, and I go to its resupply actor. So this is this resupply actor where I can specify like, okay, there's a supply of these soldiers, vehicles, helicopters, built structures, if structures need a resupply. But the idea is that right now, every structure, like right now, they're set to 500 supply, but the caveat is they're set to infinite supply. That gets turned off sometime in the next week or two. And the idea would be is that when we have the time, we add it to where the Mule was the first one that does it, where like it has a finite amount of supply. Your ammo tents, your medical tents all have finite amount. So they have to get shipments. I get to buy those shipments by just having an auto toggle, or basically just buying it if you're broke in the moment via a button. So, well, that needs to get in sometime next week. That's like probably like a 20-minute thing next week. It's like a line item between all the other shit we're doing. So we have to get that change in. That'll be put out for the Mule, and at the same time, it'll replicate out to the ammo tent, the medical tent, and the barracks, and all the other stuff randomly. And then that will set the precedent for what you're suggesting, Digital, where you can have a Humvee or the Ajax, per se, or like the Chinook that has a doctrine upgrade that you can change it out. And instead of having a weapon, it gives you utility, is what we'll call it. So that's how I see it. Because then you figure, regardless, by putting in the MUT, we still have to do this for the Atlas. Because the Atlas is basically using the same, how we programmed the game this time around, is these actor components. So I can have this actor component, and I can slap this onto an operator. I can slap that onto a structure. I can put it on anything I want. I can make anything in the game do whatever I want in terms of giving. I only want it to give it to soldiers, vehicles, helicopters, boat structures. I only want it to give it medical items, heal infection, give you gas, like that kind of shit. So then that way it gives us a lot of range to prototype and try different ideas and like do doctrines that are kind of wacky, where you could get like the Chinook idea or have a Humvee. That's a doctrine that just like is like a logistics doctrine or whatever that gets like, I don't know, it's like a faster version of the Atlas. It's more armored and it basically gives you like ammo and whatever when it's deployed, that kind of stuff. It'll be the same way we do the radio truck later on. So it'll be like an actor component that we can drag and drop. So that way the operators can call in airstrikes and ammo tents and medical ammo boxes, and everyone can do everything. This is the biggest thing with the goal of how this is rebuilt. So that way we can prototype and make new doctrines and new gameplay stuff really quickly. I think I added the ability for the Mule to resupply units in about 3 minutes. What were we doing? It was all the Patreons were in a room. We were going to play a build. And what was it? They were like, hey, like, can you get the Mule in? Because like I'm getting like so mad running around, like having to build an ammo tent everywhere. And I was like, okay, fine. Let me go see what I can do. And then I went down a rabbit hole. And I was like, well, I guess I could put the Striker in now too. Fuck it. So that's how the Striker and the Mule got put in like at like 11 o'clock at night last night before they played a build. And it was one of those things where it was like, okay, cool. I just literally made the Mule, copy the Ajax classes, changed the references, added an actor component, and it just works. And the Mule was able to immediately give ammo to every unit in the game and have a whitelist, blacklist system. So that's what I mean, where like it's that time invested over the last 8 months, not technically the last 3 months was pandemic, to build that foundation so that we can do these things quickly and rapidly and prototype entire new ways of playing the game in 5 minutes. So I'll leave it there because I'm beating a dead horse with a stick now. I greatly appreciate you guys coming to this week's podcast. We do this every week. If you want to jump in, we're not going to do a playtest tonight because I have to go help someone on something, but we'll do one next week, or I'll try to do one on Monday. I'll put a post out, and we'll try and get a group together either on Sunday or on Monday on the playtester tag. If you guys want to consider supporting our development, check out our Patreon, check out our Discord pledge system. I don't know why the fuck I'm coughing so much now that I'm talking. Or check out our merch or support packs on Steam. Everything helps. Everything helps us, like, push forward and get through the ups and downs of X, Y, and Z, working on our day jobs, because we have day jobs and we balance it out with the game. So, yeah, just one of those things, but it is what it is working on indie. We knew what we were signing up for, and we're in it for the long run, to see everything to completion, to get everything to where it needs to be, and then just knock it out of the park. So going into 2026, we can actually start to do new things. Actually like new content besides just retreading the same shit from the rebuild. But anyhow, you guys have a great weekend, and thank you guys